All right, so in today's video, we're actually going to go over some Resident Evil movie news. Now, there's been a lot of people that have actually been talking about Resident Evil, the movie that's actually a reboot, another reboot that Constantin Films is actually doing and partnering up with Sony that's happening next year. But we also have to talk about something else that no one's talking about, and it has to do with a previous Resident Evil director that we all know. So we got to go over the news. I don't know why we got so much news regarding Resident Evil movie news this week, right? I mean, it's been kind of a drought. We haven't had any Resident Evil, and then all of a sudden we got multiple Resident Evil movie news. Like, this is crazy. But anyways, let's start off with the first thing. As mentioned, now this is actually something that we've actually gone over on the channel for quite some time, but that has to do with the Zack Cregger movie. Now, we've known this movie was actually gonna be in production, I believe was like back in 2022. I remember covering it. It was leaked, and the reason it was leaked was the leak came from a source in Canada that kind of saw that the province of Ontario was actually gearing up to work on a movie called Umbrella Chronicles. So that's where everything got leaked. It was actually one of the few Resident Evil leaks that turned out to be true. But there was no director. There was nothing that basically came out of that. And it wasn't until recently, I think what was it, Matthew, 2 months ago, where we actually got information that Zack Cregger was actually going to be directing the new Resident Evil movie. And now we actually got a release date. Apparently it's coming out next year. So according to Deadline, Constantin's Resident Evil franchise reboot with the Barbarian and Weapon filmmaker Zack Cregger directing will stay at Sony. Warner Brothers was kicking the tires off this latest Cregger pick, but Sony isn't letting this $1.2 billion grossing franchise go. A theatrical release date of September 18, 2026 has been set, which tells you how excited the studios are to get this latest rendition up on the screen. Cregger's screenplay, which is co-written with Shay Hatton, Ballerina, John Wick, Chapter 3 and 4, is under wraps, but apparently harkens back to the original Capcom game's roots. Constantin Films is producing and co-financing the film. Constantin's Robert Kolzer and Vertigo Entertainment's Roy Lee, Barbarian of Minecraft, and Miri Yoon, Women of the Hour, Weapons, and PlayStation Productions are also producing. Now, he actually does state, Cregger says, "I've been a rabid fan of these games for decades, and to be able to bring this amazing title to life is a true honor." Sony Pictures released all previous Resident Evil films, including Paul W.S. Anderson's Mila Jovovich titles, as well as the 2021 version of director Johannes Roberts' Resident Evil Raccoon City at, wow, there's a misspelled there, at $1.2 billion worldwide. Resident Evil is one of the highest grossing video game feature franchises of all time, not far from the 1.36 made by Illumination Nintendo Universal Super Mario Bros. Movie, not far from the 1.2 made by Sonic the Hedgehog trilogy. What was interesting about this is that I remember when it got announced that Cregger, is it Cregger or Cregger? I don't know if this article was just bouncing off with their spelling.
I think it's Cregger.
Is it Cregger? All right, yeah. So Cregger,
yeah.
Cregger, this was a thing. There was rumors that he was actually going to be the new director for this rumored movie that was back in 2022 when we first covered it on the channel. But what was interesting was that we did know that he was working on a movie called Weapons. He did finish that last year, I believe. So it was kind of, questionable whether he was actually going to work on it. But what I find interesting about this news is that the timeline, it's specific, right? They basically gave a timeline of September, 18th, 2026. What do you think about that? What do you think of this news of Zack? I've heard he's a pretty good director from some of my viewers, but the fact that they're trying to stick to the horror, like the actual video game roots, we're getting another director that says he's a fan. What do you think about that? Do you believe that, or are you?
Well, here's the thing. So whenever the news first came out that we were going to be getting another movie, another reboot, of course, just like everybody else, we're like, oh God, here we go again.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Now, whenever they mentioned it possibly being Resident Evil 0, that made me think, you know what, maybe, just maybe, because, and I don't want to get too much into video game rumors, but there are rumors that, we may be getting an RE0 remake.
Yep.
I was thinking, you know what, if they do that on purpose to kind of play off one another, maybe that'll be a good thing. Maybe we can see the movie franchise kick off, because Capcom will kind of be saying, hey, don't screw this up. We have a remake coming out, Maybe that would kind of help. But then what really turned me off to it is we got the news of this, saying that it's going to be out next year in September. If that doesn't scream, hey guys, we need to make a movie because we don't want to lose the rights, I don't know what does.
Thank you for saying it. That's exactly what I was thinking too. And
because they only have a little over a year to make an entire movie, man. That's going to be rushed. There is no way that movie is not going to be rushed. They've only got, which
Yeah.
I'm no expert whenever it comes to how long movies are made, but I highly doubt they're going to be able to make a pretty good movie post production, and they've not even got the cast yet. Now there are rumors. I know there's a rumor that Tom Payne, who played as Paul Jesus Robia in The Walking Dead, may be in the movie. Of course, that's just a rumor. I don't know how true that is or not, but they've not even got a cast yet. And we're already in
Yeah.
March.
Well, I've
Yeah,
worked in film and television, and so kind of playing off of that, it's very short notice, and yeah, like as you stated, this definitely screams that they're trying to keep the rights, and so they're just gonna freaking push through to try to get a RE movie to try to keep the rights, because that's exactly what happened with, you know, when they first got the rights to Resident Evil, right? I mean, we just saw with George Romero's Resident Evil documentary directed by Brandon Salisbury. He basically, you know, that documentary goes into detail as to how, you know, Constantine was kind of playing with a lot with the time, and how you know, they almost got the director George A, but then they replaced him with Paul W.S. Anderson, who we're actually going to be talking about after, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, I find since I have worked in film and television, usually with TV, it's a lot faster. For example, let's say that it is a Resident Evil style of a movie. They're going to have to do a lot of CGI, you know, a lot of effects, you know, post kind of visual, you know, VFX is what they call it, right? That, for the movie, which is going to take time. So I don't know how they're going to rush that in, like you said, less than, I guess, literally a year and a couple of months, right? I mean, the cast, that means that they're probably on fire right now. They're probably going to have to, they finished the script is what the article said. And that means they're going to basically have to go and do the movie right away, cast everybody. And I should also note as well that usually when it comes to these kind of big movies, directors usually have an idea of who they want to cast already. So I've never watched The Barbarian. I'm curious, have you watched that? Because I know you're a big horror movie fan.
I haven't.
Yeah, but I actually want to look at The Barbarian cast, because usually what directors like to do is they like to hire a lot of the same people, right? So I'm actually seeing Justin Long is there, Bill Skarsgård, who I'm pretty sure played the creature in It, right?
Yes, Pennywise.
Yeah. Yeah, Pennywise, thank you. Yeah, so
and he was recently Count Orlok and Nosferatu.
Yes. Kate Bosworth. Those are like the I guess the only names that I can actually recognize from The Barbarian. So it wouldn't be a crazy kind of idea to assume that any of these actors might actually play a role, because directors usually like to do that. They like to get one or two actors that they've worked on in previous movies. What's up, boys? It's Eder from the future. As I'm editing this video, we actually got a more news for the Zack Cregger movie, and we actually got confirmation that he's actually set to shoot this fall. So as we just discussed, it's very strange that, you know, the movie's going to be releasing next year and they're not shooting this summer. They're shooting in fall. So, and I'm assuming it's going to be a very rushed process. This is not good news. And on top of this, we also got confirmation that Austin Abrams, a actor from Euphoria, I don't know, I've never seen this actor. Apparently he's like 28. I don't know. Euphoria is definitely not my kind of show. Hell no. Anyways, he's actually in talks to play the lead role. Now, what's interesting is that from the picture that they're using here, he could look like a Leon, but from judging from his other pictures, because again, I've never seen this actor, he could also play Billy. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting. Like even in the comments, one person said, good pick for Leon, but if this is Code Veronica version, then he's Steve. And by the way, these comments can be found in the article that I will have in the description. As I always do, I always source my stuff. But somebody else also says makes sense since he's also in Weapon. And what's funny is that as I just stated, you know, it's not far-fetched for directors to work with actors that they've already worked with. It's definitely not far-fetched that Austin Abrams might play the lead. But let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Do you guys think he's going to be playing Leon? Do you think he fits for Billy? If you've seen this actor, let me know how he sounds. Because like I said, I've never watched any of his stuff. But anyways, let's get back to the video because we still got a lot to cover. You also mentioned too that there's also another rumor going around that there's a guy from The Walking Dead. What's his name? Because I'm not too familiar with The Walking Dead. What's
Tom Payne is his name, and
Tom Payne. Okay.
Yeah,
like Max Payne?
I did a video on that a little while back ago, and You know, if he is going
Yeah.
to be in the movie, assuming it is Resident Evil Zero,
Billy?
you know, he could be Marcus, he could be Billy,
Yeah.
but I will
Younger
say
Marcus,
I've met
yeah.
the yeah. Now I've met the guy in person, and he's actually a short guy, so I'm not sure if he would be able to play Billy. I mean, I'm 5'9", he came up to like my shoulder. You know, he's a smaller guy.
Really? Because it says
Some
he's
people pointed out
1.7 meters, which I
he's
think
what?
is 170 centimeters in feet. How much is that? It says he's 5'5". Wow, he is little. Wow, I didn't know that that
Yeah.
made such a difference. Yeah, though,
Yeah,
that's really
and
small.
some people pointed out that he could actually do a good Leon, and if you look up pictures of him with Leon hair, he actually could. But I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, I do believe an RE0 would work because, like how you mentioned, Umbrella Chronicles sounds like a place name for a origin movie, and I don't think they're going to do another two or one movie again, considering that Welcome to Raccoon City was the last movie that they made. You know, but that's the only. I know there's some other lady that is a rumor, but I think the only reason why that's a rumor is because she mentioned something about Resident Evil. I don't really think, I think it's more so fan casting than anything. I'm not sure where the Tom Paine thing came from, but I do know that is definitely a rumor that he may be in the movie.
Yeah, you know, it kind of begs the question. It could either go two ways, and I like how you mentioned that. Like, it wouldn't make sense for them to go Resident Evil 1 again. It would make sense just because of the name Umbrella Chronicles, and this is what basically a lot of people were theorizing when the rumors first came out, or with the leaks. Like, this was actual credible leak from a film guy who loves to leak stuff, but also that leak in particular, and that's the reason I covered it on the channel, is because it actually came from the Canadian, like, provincial government. Because provincially, they have to state these are all the movie licenses or all the movies that might be working on the province of Ontario, right? Where like Toronto is, you know, the big cities like that. Or so that leak was there, and so that's where a lot of people started speculating and assuming that this was going to be with Rebecca. It's going to be RE0, but there's also the other option, and this seems like it could also be the thing. The other option that they could do is just making their own original story, just basically doing that, and just, you know, not doing RE0, doing like the same kind of Paul, you know, W.S. Anderson, Mila Jovovich kind of a thing, and making just a reboot of that. Because you have to remember, that is what they kind of did. I mean, 2021, we did have Welcome to Raccoon City, but 2022, we did have Netflix's Resident Evil, which just had nothing to do and was a carbon copy at like style, like I guess not a carbon exact copy, but it was very similar to like Resident Evil, like Extinction, Resident Evil Final Chapter, Retribution. You know, the fact that they kind of played, in the future, and then going back into like modern times, which was weird, but the future part of it being like the whole world is just filled with zombies, even though Resident Evil has never been like post-apocalyptic. The only times we've actually been somewhat close to a post-apocalyptic nightmare is with Resident Evil 5 with Wesker, you know, doing a complete global saturation, right? Like that whole plan of him doing that. But that's about it, right? I mean, we've also had the CGI movies, but you know what, we've never been we've never had a post-apocalyptic game, because that's just, you know what I mean, that Resident Evil is about stopping those bio incidents. It's not about surviving a Last of Us kind of esque, or like Mila Jovovich in the desert and then it being weird. So this movie could be just a run of the same thing that we've had, you know, like another retelling of another original-esque story. And them just using Umbrella Chronicles is weird, because I doubt they're going to copy the game Umbrella Chronicles. Like, I doubt that. That would be really weird, because
for sure.
Umbrella Chronicles covered Resident Evil 0. It also covered the in-between DLC for what happens with Rebecca in between, and also with Wesker after the events of RE1. And then it also covered Resident Evil 3, right? And was there was also the 2003 incident with Jill and Chris, them going to Russia, I believe. It's been a while since I played it, but yes, they were in a facility. So with that, I believe the Talos project. But anyways, so I doubt they're going to cover all of that. I think they're just borrowing the name and just slapping Resident Evil. And also, I find it very suspicious too that he also says that he's been a big fan of the series, right? Or that it's going to be close to the games. This means absolutely nothing. And I know some people on Twitter were kind of saying, "Oh, but it's going to be Sony. It's going to be Sony, guys." But no, it's literally just the same thing, because Sony owns Screen Gems, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I'm pretty sure that's what the article was saying, that Sony's always been a part of the Resident Evil movies. It's always been Constantin Films and Sony. Yep, I just read it. Screen Gems is an American film production company owned by Sony Pictures Entertainment, a subsidiary of Japanese multinational conglomerate. So yes, Screen Gems is, it's basically we're getting the same production companies, just different director, different run at the companies trying to make a profit, trying to make make a successful, and by successful, I'm very loose with that term because obviously the movies did do very well. Not in America. I believe it did more well internationally, and there are a bunch of fans for the movies, but they're just not. It's not Resident Evil, bro. It has nothing to do with Resident Evil.
No.
So yeah. This just makes it seem like Constantine is very desperate in doing it again, and this is something that I've talked about in my previous videos, kind of talking about the leaks of that ended up being true about this movie, right? It seems Constantine Films, as you mentioned, right? You hit the nail right on the head, that they just are basically do not want to let go of the rights, and they want to make sure that they that they just hold on to it so that they can get they can make as much money as possible, because that's all they really care about. I mean, if the production company Constantin Films didn't care about money, then we would have had a fantastic product. The fact that they've already tried once, twice, 3 times, and now they're trying another 4th time, and as we're going to go over, it seems they might be trying a 5th time. It seems like the world of Resident Evil live action movies is never going to be good unless Constantin Films sells the rights to a different company, in my opinion, because this isn't going to go well. But yeah, what are your final thoughts on this whole thing?
Now, I do know that the whole Sony thing, I do know it is a fact that there is some kind of bidding war going on. I don't know if that means that Sony/Screen Gems will have anything to do with it. I'm assuming that means they won't, if of course they let it go. But I don't think that makes much of a difference, because I looked it up a while back ago, and I think the idea is that whenever, obviously Constantine still owns the rights. They're still the ones behind it, period. But I think, and I could be wrong about this, that the budget and some of the decisions are made by some companies like that. Matter of fact, I talked to Brandon Salisbury, the guy who directed George A. Romero's Resident Evil, and if I remember talking to him about it some, and I think that he mentioned that simply, like whenever he even made his documentary, of course he was bought, it was bought by an actual company, and they pretty much made some decisions that had to be made since they bought it. Like, okay, you need to make it this long, you need to cut some things here and there. And I think that's where some of these, like Sony, for example, where they do have a say in what can and cannot be in the film, not just Constantine. So I think that's where a lot of people's hopes were getting up, saying that, this is going to be somebody different. And while, yes, it still could be, it's still not going to make that much of a difference, because Constantine is still behind it. It's still the executives and the people in the room,
the money-hungry
that are going
executives
to change things.
Yep.
Exactly. Could it make some difference? Maybe, but it's not going to make a lot. It's just not.
They've had 3 chances.
The best way I could think about it, analogy-wise, is if you're making a movie and somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I'll give you $100,000 if I can publish this for you," then yeah, you're getting paid, but they do have decisions of what can and cannot be taken out. But at the end of the day, though, you're still the one that is responsible for it, and that's how it is with Constantine.
Yep.
Yes, somebody like Sony can change it, but they're still not going to be able to change everything, because Constantine is still the one behind it.
And that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. That's actually something that I've been saying for the longest time since Welcome to Raccoon City release, is that executive producers or production companies control so much. So even though Johannes Roberts, whatever, if you like his directing style, it doesn't matter, because you had executive producers. Guess who was on the executive producer list for Welcome to Raccoon City? It was Paul W.S. Anderson. So I wouldn't be surprised if he also does the same thing here, just kind of goes in, because again, we're going to be talking about him right now. But anyways, going back to what I was saying, production companies have so much say over a director that they can just basically go over. I mean, that's one of the reasons why George Lucas, for example, when he first did Star Wars, the first Star Wars movie, he worked with a production company. But then after, he in the clause basically said, no, if this movie is successful and we do another one, Empire Strikes Back, which is one of the most favorite Star Wars movies of all time, he's going to be doing it by himself. So independently with his own production, which is what Lucasfilm happened. And why did he do that? Because he didn't like that all of these producers were sitting in this production company kind of deciding what to do with his IP. You know what I mean? So after he got his shut up money with the first Star Wars that was super successful, he's like, I'm out of here, boys. I'm out of here. Thank you so much, but I'm never seeing you again. And then you could also argue that him selling it to Disney later, whatever. But the point here that I'm trying to make is that there's a reason why directors don't like production companies. And I highly recommend you guys go watch George A. Romero's documentary from director Brandon Salisbury. I actually have to do a review. I was doing it mid-move, but yeah, that's definitely something I wanted.
The only other final thought I have about it is, like I said, I had hope for just a tiny sliver of hope. Because again, I was thinking logically, like even if you look at Welcome to Raccoon City, that came out, that came out a little bit after RE2 remake did. Yeah. And I kind of wonder if Sony, or sorry, not Sony, if Capcom, and Constantine, if maybe Capcom said, hey, try to promote Resident Evil 2 remake, even though the game was already out. It had a lot of remake 2 attributes to it compared, it was more like the 2 remake than the original 2, really. If you look at RPD and things like that, like Mr. X, he was going to be in it. So my opinion
what
here is
what were you talking about specifically?
Like, so Mr. X, he was supposed to be in Welcome to Raccoon City originally.
Oh, I see. Oh, so but were you saying that Welcome to Raccoon City was made just because of the success of Resident Evil 2 remake?
No.
Oh.
I'm saying that I wonder. I mean, obviously, it had to be made because they were going to, or else they were going to lose the rights.
Yeah.
But this isn't a confirmation, at least not that I know of. It's just me kind of thinking here. I wonder if Capcom interjected and said, "Hey, try to promote, our game, and that's why they add some attributes of it.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah,
not with Constantine.
I was going to say because. Yeah, I was going to say, if that was the case, then that does make sense if we do get a Zero remake as to why it would be a Zero movie. But at the same time, you could argue that if they are doing a Umbrella Chronicles, that would be because, films, they have placeholder names all the time. So it would make sense if this was going to be an origin movie. And again, that had me excited a little bit. Because it was a fresh start, maybe since they're focusing on just one game, maybe it'll be good for once. But with their release date window, it just, I don't see how there's any way for there to be a good movie made within just a year and a half, basically. I don't see how that's possible. And as far as the director saying, oh, I'm a fan of these games, any director ever with any kind of IP always says that. I don't care if it's a superhero movie or whatever. They always say, oh, I grew up reading the comics, or oh, I grew up watching the cartoon, or I played this game. Okay, of course you did, sure.
Excellent point. Yeah, because they can't say the alternative. Yeah, I don't know nothing about Resident Evil, and I'm going to be helming the new Resident Evil movie. You can't say that. You know what I mean? You look like a fool. So yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Paul W.S. Anderson said he played them. Keep that in mind. Paul W.S. Anderson, he always said, oh, I played the games.
Yep.
And we all know how that turned out.
What games did you play, Paul? Which ones did you play? I want to know. Can you imagine? I would love to ask. I'd love to sit down with Paul just to speak with him. Not because I love I should mention, I despise what he did with Resident Evil Extinction and what he did with Final Chapter. Those are some of the most just worst movies of all time. And then it doesn't help that every movie just scraps what the other one was doing. It's almost like he just had to go to the bathroom and then with the script and it's like, oh yeah, we'll do that next time. But then he started the new project and was like, oh, what was I doing last time? Oh, whatever. I got to go to the washroom. That kind of brings us to the next part of the news story, which is, again, the timing is super sus, but we actually got word that Paul W.S. Anderson might not be done with with Resident Evil movies, which is, well...
Grab my beer real quick.
Yeah. All right, let's go over it, man. So,
oh God.
You never say never. Resident Evil's director opens up about revisiting the horror franchise again. Resident Evil movies haven't always had the best rep in the film industry. Many fans of the games felt like horror movies directed by Paul W.S. Anderson never quite got the adaptations right and felt like they distanced themselves from the games rather than honed in on what made them so popular to begin with. However, Resident Evil is not only the highest grossing film series based on a video game, but is almost also once the highest grossing horror film series ever ever. Even though it was slated by critics and fans, the 6 movies in the reboot made quite a lot of money, over $1.2 billion worldwide.
So, we're talking millions of casualties.
Billions.
Talking to MovieWeb's
Yeah.
George Edelman, in an exclusive interview, Milla Jovovich and Paul W.S. Anderson discussed their upcoming fantasy film In the Lost Lands, which is an adaptation of George R.R. Martin's short story. During questions about the movie, which including having to flesh out its storyline more, Edelman asked the husband and wife duo if they had plans to return to Resident Evil universe again. And as much as I don't want the answer, I need to say thank you, Edelman, for asking, because we wouldn't have known that this was even cooking up in Paul W.S. Anderson's thing. But anyways, he says, would we want to revisit that? You know, it's a character that I know Milla loves, and it's a franchise that I love. We spent a lot of our lives working on it, so of course, you never say never, replied Anderson. Jovovich, who had a long-running play of Alice in the franchise, said that she recognized that Resident Evil has a huge fan base and that it would be wonderful to continue the story. Every world is interesting and has so many nooks and crannies that we didn't look into, something that someone else might look into. My first thoughts is, what would they continue? They've already literally just made the worst story ever with freaking Extinction and Final Chapter. And you know it's a bad story because they kind of tried to like retcon and make a story out of nothing, because Extinction is a post-apocalyptic world. There's nothing to tell after. Like, oh, the world's covered by zombies. Why are they still fighting Umbrella soldiers at that point? Even though in the games during that point in 2004 or 2004 in the games universe, Umbrella was finished, right? We know that from Resident Evil 4's intro sequence. So why are they still fighting? You know what I mean? It's almost like it becomes very just nonsensical, almost like what I've heard happens with like Walking Dead or zombie stuff media that has to do with that, right? Like, it's like there's only so much that you can go and continue if there's nothing that the world can change. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that can save the whole entirety of the world. Mind you, I haven't watched The Walking Dead, but that is something that Last of Us kind of changed a bit, in my opinion, where they did add the whole possibility of there being a cure. While Resident Evil Extinction never plays with that idea. They just said, oh, the world's screwed up. Now let's go and save people in a building, Afterlife. And then let's save people in some pods that the research facility is still researching, even though there's nothing to research because there's no people. And then Final Chapter, I watched Final Chapter only once and never again. So my point here is, what could they bring? Like what? Like, I know in Final Chapter, doesn't she meet like her old self or something? Like an old clone or something like that.
They literally contradicted the entire series of that last movie. I mean, like how you said earlier, all the movies, like, it just feels so disconnected. But that last one just retconned almost everything. Yeah, it was okay. So it was like that. Like they, so the Red Queen was based after the programmer's daughter. That's said in the first movie. Turns out that it was actually the original Alice, apparently, is who it was based after.
Yeah. Something like that, right?
Like, and then, like, Wesker, they kill him in a really stupid way. One thing that honestly literally made me laugh out loud, was they brought back the that researcher guy from the second movie, who was also the villain in the third one.
What the frick was
and
his
they brought
name?
him back because he was Isaacs, I think?
Yeah, Dr. Isaacs, yes. Yes. Good memory.
Thinking about it makes me laugh.
That was so corny.
He was like a religious leader, and then he had a second clone. Oh, I'm sorry, it was actually the original Isaac. And this clone had like a fight, and it was so stupid.
Yeah, and he was like tyrant. He was like a tyrant-esque, like, I don't know,
the third one he was, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, is that what I'm thinking about? Yeah, I'm getting confused now. So because I only watched the final chapter once, but I remember the fight like on like a truck or whatever, right? They were fighting or something. That's all I remember. I don't know.
God, dude, listen, I'm epileptic, and like
oh really?
Flashing lights. Yeah, so flashing lights, they actually don't bother me. But watching that, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna have a seizure. Oh my god.
Oh my god. Like, I'm light sensitive, so
I mean, I'm joking. I wasn't actually, but I was thinking of it because like they cut every single 3 seconds.
I roughly remember that.
Yeah, that fight was it's almost like they literally filmed it for 3 seconds with like 50 different phones and then just like combined
Spliced
it
it.
together.
Yeah, but
it looked awful.
But I mean, if there's one guy who could just splice another nonsense of a movie together, it could definitely be Paul W.S. Anderson. I mean, he's done it for how many like movies? I should state, for those of you that don't know, I like some of them. I do, but I don't think that they're good Resident Evil movies. It's not Resident Evil for me. Like, I think they're dumb fun, as we were discussing before. I like Afterlife. You know what I mean? I thought the character of the black guy, what's his name, Luthor. I actually, Capcom during that time, if you guys didn't know, they were thinking of actually putting that character into the game, and we do know that the movies have inspired the games, right? That's where all of the action was coming from, especially with the laser room for the first Resident Evil movie, and then you have the lasers being a thing in Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, I guess. Well, they had like the laser thing where you turn, and then also like Resident Evil 6, they had like one laser room kind of as an homage of Resident Evil 4 and also the other one. So you know what I mean? That is an interesting topic. Of the movies did kind of push Capcom to think, let's do more action packed, right, stuff. You know, I liked Afterlife, as mentioned. I liked Retribution. I thought the music was really awesome. I like the I can't even think of it right now, but all the fight scenes, it's like not the fight scenes, but like the build up to the fighting, the fighting music was pretty good. Like it was good, but again, the story makes absolutely no sense. It seems like Alice has a tendency of just grabbing little girls and saving them and then just leaving them behind. Like she did that with Kay, she did that with Alexia, she did that with the girl in the fourth one, which we never see again. Didn't she do that with the new one? No, I think that was just an AI. That
her
was like the
daughter, kind of like that weird, like
kind
of like her daughter.
Yeah, so I don't know what's with the abandoning of children, but and I don't know how that relates to Resident Evil. But yeah, you know what I mean? So like going back to what I was saying is, could Paul W.S. Anderson come up with another Resident Evil movie? Yes. And the fact that he even said that is it worries me, man. It worries me because like, let's just say hypothetically, if Resident Evil, this Umbrella Chronicles thing, turns out to be freaking fantastic, again, this is hypothetical. I'm not saying it's gonna be, and I don't support that idea. But hypothetically, let's say it's great. Guess who would come back for that fame and fortune? I have a feeling that if it starts being awesome, or that, you know, that he would actually come back to do a continuation of the previous. And how would that work? What would he pull out of, you know what I mean, where the sun don't shine? You know what? I think he's probably he could do it, and that's what worries me. And I wouldn't be surprised if Paul W.S. Anderson actually takes up the role of an executive producer for Zack Cregger. Now, I was actually surprised that he didn't do that for the Netflix Resident Evil show. He was not an executive producer.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. And honestly, I'm not sure how this works or if he's done movies for Constantine before, but why does Constantine glaze this guy so much, man?
Because he made them $1.32 billion. What was it? That's why.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I guess they're probably just like, oh, he made this money. But what I'm hoping, when, again, this is probably because it never comes to this company, anything that makes logical sense goes out the window.
$1.2 billion worldwide. Resident Evil is one of the highest grossing video game franchises of all time. Yeah, $1.2 billion. Up there with Nintendo, Illumination, Super Mario's, and Sonic the Hedgehog. The same as Sonic the Hedgehog.
I mean, what I was saying, though, is like, you know, so obviously Welcome to Raccoon City didn't do that great, and they know that. So if theoretically this movie did do really good, I don't know why they would glaze Paul over a director that would actually bring the movie back to the forefront, unless they are really stupid and they're just like, oh, well, now that we're back, we can bring back the old guy, which honestly wouldn't surprise me if they did do that, because the way he says it, he's like, never say never. I don't know if he has any sort of connections or something, because it sounds like he can just walk in there where he wants to. It's kind of the way he sounds.
Yeah, I have another script, Constantine. Let's do it again.
He's like, I wrote it while I was taking a dump. Here you go. This is what I got. He's like,
Yeah.
and it was only 5 minutes, by the way, but I have a whole script wrote out because that's about how much thought's put into those movies. I feel like I was saying, like the best way I can describe those movies is like imagine if you just like did drugs and played 3 Resident Evil games together. Like imagine if you were to play Resident Evil 1, 5, and 6 and do drugs or something, and then whenever
Ayahuasca.
you are high, try to write a movie about it. That's the best way I can describe those films.
Yeah, what in the ayahuasca is this, bro? No, that's true. Yeah, but going back to Welcome
Yeah.
to Raccoon City, one thing that I noticed, and this is when the pandemic happened, so obviously, you know, things were weird. I did go and see the movie during that whole process, but that was back in what 2021 September, November, I believe. But the film was a commercial and critical flop. This is from another 411 Mania article, and it basically said grossing only $17 million domestically and only $41 million worldwide off of a $25 million budget. And if I'm not mistaken, the OG, like the first Paul W.S. Anderson movie, had a 29 million, if I'm not mistaken. And what's interesting about this is that the marketing for this movie was non-existent. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Welcome to Raccoon City's like marketing was it just didn't exist. There were no posters. Nobody knew when it was releasing. And if you did know that it was releasing, you were probably super disappointed. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
33 million. 33 million, 32 million. So just a little more above, which was very interesting. That was very weird. And I remember saying that in my review. I was like, why did Constantin Films just give so little money? And I imagine this new Sony one is going to get a lot of money. I'm not going to lie. Because how much was the Netflix Resident Evil? I'm pretty sure that one was a lot, wasn't it? Resident Evil Netflix.
I don't know.
Television budget. It did 80 million according to Resident Evil Wiki. 80 million. That's crazy. So Netflix had the most money. And I remember even with Netflix, they had like a whole thing like in Times Square where they had like a liquor, which is pretty cool. Like the marketing was pretty on point.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah,
movie,
was cool.
the show was complete trash. Oh my gosh. I never want to watch it ever again.
No,
But-
I only watched one episode and I couldn't, man. I just couldn't do it.
If you guys made it to this point at the end, make sure to write in the comments, Paulie sucks. Click this video if you guys want to see my previous Resident Evil movie news video. And also don't forget to check out Raccoon City Pizza's channel. I'll leave it up right here as well. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys.